Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crowley. I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be doing a craft project video showing how you can make your own greeting card that looks a little bit like one of these signboards that you sometimes see on the sidewalk outside of a restaurant or a shop advertising what's inside. And what I'm beginning with is a sheet of smooth surface Bristol. Now in America, the Strathmore company makes these pads that give you Bristol board, but I think all over the world you're going to find smooth surface Bristol as an option. And in other countries it won't necessarily be cut into 11 inches by 14, which is what they do in America. But whatever pad you use, you should be able to take any one of the sheets and just sort of split it right down the middle. From 11-inch wide sheet of paper, 5.5 inches ends up being the division there. And then I just sort of eyeballed it and came up with 3.25 inches, which in centimeters comes out to something like 8 centimeters to get that shape that I wanted. Now I'm going to go ahead and do all of the basic guidelines of the signboard itself, and then I'll be back to explain how I came up with that system. Alright, so here are the measurements that I used. Each one of these vertical bars is like 1/4 inch from side to side. And then these horizontal bars at the top and the bottom, this is like 3/4 inches, both of them exactly the same. And then I've just left a gap down here. This is going to get cut away so as to form the sort of legs of this signboard, okay? And then one other thing that I'm going to do is to create just a slightly curved shape here. I think it'll make it a little more interesting if we cut away just a couple of areas here to make it rounded at the top. That's a decorative choice. And indeed, I could go through, tell you what all of this is in metric, centimeters, but again, I think the basic shape of the paper that you're working with, it's not going to be exactly the same. If they're selling this in Europe or other places all over the world, I don't think it's going to be 11 inches by 14, and you really want to base it off of the natural pre-cut size of the paper. I'm widening this out just a little bit because it looks like it wasn't quite wide enough there. And that's going to leave you with this space in the middle. Now, if you can get hold of construction paper, just sort of like child's pads of paper, and they have all the different colors, you're going to want to get the black sheet of paper to create the what do you call that? The chalkboard section in the middle of this signboard. But for now, what I'm going to do is sort of cut along this line, maybe cut this out, cut out these things, and then we're going to get into beginning to add color to the illustration. Alright, now one of the things you might have seen me do is I took my pair of scissors, opened it up and scored along this line with the help of a metal ruler. That just helps you do a nice clean fold. Of course, you can always just try to fold it on your own, but this will give you a cleaner line there. And then it becomes easy to cut these 2 spaces, or 3 I guess it is, away all at the same time. And that's how you end up with the structure that you need for making this card. Now what I'm going to do now is grab a kind of ochre, light brown colored marker. You wouldn't have to do this with marker. You could do it with watercolor or indeed any material that you feel comfortable with. This entire project could be done with colored pencils, I could certainly imagine. But you see, I'm just going to go through and take this whole frame area of the signboard and color it in with the marker. So let's do this in time lapse, and then I'll be back for the next part of the project. Okay, so you can see I'm really ready to go at this stage to move on to using the black construction paper to measure the interior space here and create our chalkboard shape. Now, with my system, it ended up measuring about 2 3/4 wide by 3.5 inches tall. But again, you can come up with any system you want. You don't have to follow exactly along with what I've done. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that out, cut the piece out of the paper, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. All right, so now you can see if I've measured it correctly, and it looks like I have, that's going to be the blackboard center of our card. Now, what I've chosen to use is this kind of spray mount adhesive that gives you a nice, smooth, source of glue on one side of it. But you could use just ordinary glue, or if you have double-sided tape, that would work just as well. So give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and spray this up, and we'll attach it to the card. All right, so we've got it attached in place, and it really is, you can see, starting to look like one of those signboards that you would see on the sidewalk. And my idea is to have two different areas of lettering, above and below. And I think what I'll do is, I'll show you that it's helpful if you want to have your letters come in straight. To do just a little bit of a guideline with your ruler to begin with. You don't have to, but I don't trust myself to get these letters straight. And then down here, I thought it would be fun to have the words "Today's Special" written at the bottom, and I'll explain in a minute why I settled on that phrase. But let's go ahead and I'm going to, in time-lapse, I'm going to write up here Chez Crilly to sort of create my own restaurant. And then down here, you'll see me add in those letters, Today's Special. All right, so for Chez Crilly, I'm going in with a Micron permanent ink pen to finalize these letters, having sort of sketched them out in pencil first. I highly recommend doing that unless you are a genius at lettering and can go straight in with the ink to begin with. Of course, you should feel free to choose your own lettering. I'm leaving a little bit of a gap in here so that I can add color to these letters, and you can see that I decided to add a little sort of cartoony image of a fork and knife here in between the words Chez and Crilly. But this would be fun, I think, for people to personalize it. Of course, if you have a long last name, maybe you want to make this card a little wider so that you can fit the last name in, or you could just come up with your own funny name for a restaurant. But I'm going to go ahead and finish inking this all in, and we'll be back to add a bit of color. So one of the nice things about the phrase "today's special" is it is typical of these signs, but it also could be read as "today is special," right? And in my case, I'm doing a birthday card for my son, Matthew, who turns 21. This week, and so I thought today is indeed special. That works for two different meanings there. But one thing you can do to make your card look even nicer is to get a dark brown pencil, or even black, I suppose, and try adding lightly just a little bit of wood grain texture. I think that little extra detail could, go a long way towards making this look like a real signboard that you might see out on the sidewalk somewhere. And it really doesn't take that long. You don't have to be super artistic about it. I just will create these sort of oval shapes periodically, sort of knots in the wood that make it look at least a little bit like real wood grain. I'll finish this up in time lapse, and we'll be back to add even more color to this illustration. So now that I've got my wood grain in there, I'm going in with a red colored pencil to add a little coloring to these letters. I feel like a sign of this sort would have at least a little bit of color in the frame area. And I am actually going to go for my beloved white gouache to add white highlights to the fork and the knife there. But I really hope people will be inspired to, use this video to make your own greeting card. I don't know why this project popped into my head a while ago, and I thought, I got to do it, just so that I can see what does it look like when you make one of these sandwich boards, or whatever they call them. A-frame, I think A-frame, sidewalk sign. Who knows what I'm going to entitle this video. This may be a tricky video to come up with a good title for. But it's now time for me to do that quick little bit of white gouache on the fork and knife, and then we'll come back to finally write the message on the chalkboard. Alright, so you can see we're pretty much done with the actual card itself. All that remains is to write a message, and I would highly advise trying to get hold of a nice white colored pencil because it's going to naturally have that slightly grainy look that chalk would have. And then, you know, this is sort of the moment of truth. You don't want to ruin it, but I'm going to go in lightly and sort of figure out where I want my words "Happy Birthday, Matthew" to go, and allow myself a second time to go on top of these letters. I suppose you could try to do this with pencil first, but I figured it probably would not show up that well anyway, so I'm just throwing caution to the wind and doing the lettering straight onto the page. I guess we can get a little exclamation point in there. And then how about a little drawing of a cake? Huh? 21 years old, hard to believe that that boy who was just a little baby 21 years ago is now almost ready to graduate from college. Couldn't be more proud of the man. And so yeah, let's go ahead and throw a few. I can't draw 21 candles, I don't think, but I suppose I can fit 3. And how about the number 21 on the cake, just to personalize it a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and go on top of this to darken it up. Darken it up? Lighten it up? What do I say when I'm... beef up the lines, let's say, to make them more visible. And then I'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well there is my greeting card project. Let me know what you thought of it. I hope it inspires you. And of course, if you get ambitious, you've got a whole second side here that you could illustrate and add another message to. And the inside, of course, is for writing any notes that you want to add. If you want to write lots of notes, of course, you're going to make that card bigger to begin with. But a very happy birthday to my son, Matthew. Looking forward to having a nice big slice of cake with him this coming Sunday when he officially turns 21. But I think it is time for me to lay down this marker. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back with another one real soon.